Ding, 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 ding. Okay, honestly, I hate Gambit, but one of my friends showed me a build that made it, I wouldn't say fun, but maybe tolerable. And I tried it out for the last hour or two, and I wouldn't say that Gambit's all of a sudden like the best part of Destiny, not even close, but it did make it a lot more fun than usual, and I was topping the leaderboards every single match, getting the most modes banked, and it was actually kind of fun feeling like a vacuum cleaner out there. So let me show you how it works. Okay, so this entire build is centered around this mod on your class item, which is called Powerful Attraction. Now, normally this just sucks up orbs of power, which is of course really helpful, but in Gambit it also sucks up motes, which is kind of crazy. You're basically turned into a vacuum cleaner that anytime you activate your class ability, which on Hunter is our dodge, it sucks up all of the motes around your little area, and it has pretty good range. Like, it's not going to get all of them in an area, but if you're punching things, which we'll be doing with this build, and just dodging, it's going to naturally pick up like all the ones in the area. And I was amazed at how frequently I would get to 15 motes without even realizing it, and then have to go bank and then come back and get more. And it was crazy. Like, I've never filled up my motes this quickly in all of the years of playing Gambit. I'll quickly go through every other item slot just so you can see what I was using. Now, the rest of it really is up to your own preferences, but this is just the way that I was using it based on what my friend showed me. So on our helmet, I was going with arc targeting, and I'm using a sniper rifle this build, which helps if you're invading. That just gives you a little bit more aim assist. It's not like essential, but it is nice for if you end up either invading or countering an invader and want to snipe them. Dynamo here gives you super every time you dodge when you're near enemies, which is going to happen like all of the time. And then hands-on gives you bonus energy when you're getting melee kills, which also is happening all the time. So between the two of those, you're going to be getting your super really, really fast. Like, it's to the point where you could probably use your super multiple times per match. I was just running around punching things because it was pretty fun, but if you're playing Sweat Air, you definitely could be popping the super pretty frequently. So for your gloves, you're going to be using Liar's Handshake, which is one of my favorite exotics for Hunter. It's been one of my favorites for a very long time, and I was super excited to see this working really well in Gambit. Basically, anytime you punch with your melee, or if you get punched and then follow up with a punch, you have an extremely strong punch, which pretty much decimates anything that you take down. Any of the big yellow bars, it does a lot of damage, and that also stacks with our subclass, which I'll talk about in a second. So for the mods on this, I've been trying out Focusing Strike, which gives you class ability energy anytime you damage with a melee attack. And you might be thinking, well, that's kind of silly because on a Hunter, you can just automatically get dodge ability back instantly by punching things to death with the subclass, which is true. But there are times when you don't have it up and you really want to be dodging. So I found this just helps a little bit to start punching things and get that next dodge back in case you haven't gotten the kill with your other melee yet. So something you could definitely take off and switch around, but I found it pretty helpful. Impact Induction gives you grenade energy back anytime you punch, which is going to be happening all the time with this build. Really, really helpful. And then for that final slot, Heavy Handed gives you orbs of power anytime you get melee final blows, which again is going to be happening all the time. On your chest here, you really have a lot of options, so I was running mostly just different resistance mods based on the enemies that I was facing in the Gambit matches I was playing, but you could really move this around anything you want. You could also go with reserves if you feel like you're somehow capping out on your power ammo, which wasn't really happening for me, but that would be an option. Now for your boots, you also have a lot of options here. I was trying out recuperation along with better already, and so anytime you pick up an orb, it will give you both a boost of instant health as well as start your recovery back. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing just to stay alive because I was getting beat up a little bit. I was running a little bit of low resilience on this build, which I would actually recommend going higher resilience and probably stacking mobility and resilience together because there's a lot of other ways to recover. But I didn't want to mess with all my armor because I have mostly low resilience armor from PvP. Also having Arc Scavenger is really helpful because I've been running double special weapons with this since you're mostly just dealing with trash mobs with your punches, so it's really, really nice to be able to do double special. Now alternatively, another cool way to run this would be to use this mod Elemental Charge and then use this to generate armor charge, and then you could use this with any of the other ones that consume armor charge. Like for example, you could do the ones that give you arc weapon charge, so that way you have a little bit of armor charge just from collecting all of these ionic traces, which are going to happen pretty frequently. And then on top of that, you will be able to spend that with this arc weapon surge. So just an idea to try out. And finally, on our class item, we have Bomber, which gives you grenade energy anytime you dodge, which again is going to be happening all the time. and then the new powerful attraction mod, which is really the centerpiece of this whole thing. And then I've been using Reaper, which makes it so that anytime you dodge, you'll also be able to make an orb of power on your next final weapon blow, which I wasn't getting weapon kills that much, honestly, because I was punching so much, but it is nice to get your super back a little bit faster when you're making orbs for yourself and your teammates. Now, weapons wise, you can really use whatever you like here. I've been trying out Wither Horde, which worked pretty well. If I had conditional finality, I would definitely be using that instead, but unfortunately I don't have that thing, so instead I'm trying out Wither Horde, which does kind of help with the trash mobs. It's definitely nice to have a sniper rifle, and I've been using the Macabre just because it has crazy range, which for Gambit is really important since the ranges are so much more than just a typical PvP map. So if you're into sniping, it's really nice for invading and also for countering an invader, but really anything here is fine too. You could use a fusion rifle if you like that, or even a shotgun. Really anything would be fine. And for my heavy, I've been using Half Truce with Eager Edge, and that's really just nice for zooming around the map a little bit faster. Again, most of your damage out there is going to be from punching anyway, so this just helps you get from point to point a little bit faster and clear the map. And I view this role as sort of like the moat collector guy anyway, so it's not like you're going to be using this so much for like invading or whatever. You have your sniper rifle for that, and then, you know, swords do pretty decent boss damage too, so it works out pretty well. In the seasonal artifact, there's actually quite a few really cool mods here that help us too. So first of all, Amped Up makes us amplified longer anytime we become amplified, which is going to help us with this one, Thunder's Retort. So anytime you cast your Arc Super, if you are already amplified, it will do more damage. You can also use it when you're critically wounded, but in Gambit, you don't want to be critically wounded if possible, because it's just not a good thing in general. So it's nice that you can actually proc this when you're amplified. And while we're amplified, we also get some damage resistance from this one here, Electric Armor. In the final column, this Shotgun All one's really cool, so anytime you're amplified, it also makes a burst of lightning that damages and jolts other targets, which is going to happen all the time again since you're amplified pretty frequently. And then Lightning Strikes Twice is kind of nice just for anytime you throw your grenade, you get it back a little bit faster. And we're typically using the Flux Grenade on this build, which has kind of a long cooldown, so this is really nice to just get that back a little bit faster. Alright, so let's talk about our subclass for a second. So for the super, we're going to be using Gathering Storm. This one to me is basically a no-brainer. This works really well for boss damage. It can also work well if you have like a high value target you want to kill quickly, or even if you just want to kill a big pack of enemies and you're kind of running into trouble. But for the most part, I've been saving this for doing some big boss damage. You're going to be using the combination of Gambler's Dodge together with the Combination Blow, so anytime you dodge, if you dodge near an enemy, you will automatically get your punch back, and then when you punch an enemy, you'll get a stack of Combination Blow, and then you keep repeating this cycle where you can get up to 3 times stacks, which is really powerful. It does a crazy amount of damage to even like pretty chunky yellow bars once you have it ×3, and also with the Liar's Handshake gloves, it does, you know, even more damage, so it's a really nice combo. Like I said, we're using the Flux Grenade, which I don't think is like that important for this build, but it is nice when you see kind of like a chunky enemy, you can throw the Flux Grenade at them and you're getting your energy back a couple different ways. You're getting it from every time you dodge with the bomber, and then also some of the artifact stuff that we were looking at. For your jump, you can really use whatever you want here. I've been using triple jump, which works really well with your sword, but that's up to you, personal preference. For the aspects, I've been using Flow State and Lethal Current together, and then for the fragments, I'm going with Shock, Feedback, Resistance, and Ions. Basically, the synergy here is that with Lethal Current, anytime you dodge and then you punch, you're going to jolt that target, and then by killing them, you're also going to become amplified with Flow State. And then you can also jolt enemies with your grenades through Shock, which is really cool. Feedback's going to give you a little bit of extra melee outgoing damage, which is going to pair really nicely with the build. You get a little bit of extra damage resistance from the Spark of Resistance, which is nice. And then Ions is just going to give you Ionic Traces anytime you defeat a jolted enemy. This build is super fun, and if you're someone like me who typically does not like Gambit very much, I highly recommend you at least give this a try, because I was shocked at how fun it was just vacuum up all the moats. I don't foresee myself becoming some big Gambit sweat all of a sudden. I probably won't play it a whole lot more, but it definitely brought some life into this kind of lull of the Destiny season where there's not all that much interesting things to do right now. And, you know, just that's what we got to do, is figure out some, you know, interesting ways to play the game from time to time. Just for fun, I did load up a solo Gambit custom match and tried to bank moats as fast as possible, and I was kind of amazed at how quickly I went from 0 to 100 and was able to get the Primeval to spawn. It's kind of a silly challenge, but I just wanted to see what was possible with this build, and I was amazed at how quickly you could fill up each round of 15 moats. So give this loadout a try, and if you have any cool build ideas that you think would make for a really cool video, drop them in the comments and I'll definitely check them out. If you haven't seen it yet, I made a whole video about the best weapons to farm this season. It's linked on screen and in the description.